Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Pleased to be with you. Today we're going to be looking at orphans and orphan trains particularly, and the beginning of this phenomena, and possibly the whys and my ideas on this going forward, and where we currently are with this, because nothing happens in this realm without some kind of effect, a ripple effect if you like, from such events. So I've got a slideshow I've put together today for you, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. So please like, share and subscribe if you like my content, and we'll get on to my Orphans show. So let's see. Okay, so in the late 1800s, thousands of children were moved via the trains across the world, not just America, but the world. In my research I did on this many years ago, and this is all from memory, I think in New York, over a 3-year period, over 250,000 children, just under 300,000 children were actually moved in a 3-year period. And when you look at the narrative in the historical official version, what it actually says is that these children were given up by prostitutes and were then sent into the interior of America to support the population. That doesn't sound believable to me. Complete hokum, actually. So what we're talking about is the arrival of lots and lots of very young babies onto the scene. Now, when we go to the Chicago World Fair in 1893, there was a grand hall full of babies. So I understand that in 1891, the cloning of babies had been perfected. So yeah, we're talking about cloned babies, cloned human beings. And in the Chicago World Fair of 1893, this new technology was shown to the world in the World Fair. And so what we had, I'm not saying these photographs are from the World Fair, these are just images that represent what I'm talking about, but what we had were a handful of nurses with lots of very young babies. And I think from memory there was something like 2,000 or 3,000 babies in this room. So you can see again representation of babies all born at the same time, all produced at the same time. Now, babies alone are not much use to anybody particularly, especially the controllers. So along with this technology of potentially being able to produce babies, we then have infant incubators. And what we see is, and I've got plenty of examples of this, is all across the world, but this one happens to be in America. We have infant incubator buildings where you would take your child. This one's in Coney Island, America, and the children get put in this device, and in an hour I think they grow something like 2 or 3 years inside this device. "12 months, sorry, 12 months in 1 hour in this device." So what we have here is a series of photos where a baby is being taken and it's going to be put in this incubator. And this, I believe, is the end result. So probably been in there a few hours and we have a large child. Now, whether this is correct or not, I don't know, but it certainly does show some kind of something going on. But we actually have photographs from 1913 of baby incubators still being used. And as you can see, the baby would go in here and in 1 hour would grow 12 months in size. But not in education, clearly. And this is another picture of another place where we have all the incubators around. Baby incubators, child life station. Very interesting, eh? So what this really does call into question is our understanding of us and where we come from. Because it would appear that human beings can be cloned, this is in the late 1800s, could be cloned, grown on into children. So here we have more, we just have an incubator sign here. People are just walking up and down the street. And again, more incubator designs, and you know, there could be children in there. And this is in Germany. This one's in Berlin, Germany. So across the entire world, it appears that we have baby incubators and children being grown on. And here we go again, another baby incubator building and another one. And from the dress here, I think we can kind of see the kind of Victorian type of era that we're talking about here. And again, this is the United States, and we have United States flags flying over this building. But what's very shocking is this photograph, because this looks possibly like the 20s. I'm not sure, but we can clearly see that baby incubators with living babies were a thing in the in the 20th century, basically. And that's not what we're taught at school, is it? So obviously, if you have a lot of young babies that you can put in an incubator and grow on to a certain level, we then get lots of children. And this is where we get, I believe, the rise of the orphanage. And now I can remember my nan being very scared of orphanages, or the workhouse as they used to call it as well. And fundamentally, if you weren't lucky enough to have a family, you would be put to work in the workhouses for slave labour. But this is an orphanage, and you can see all the children are all the same age. Now, what are the chances of the children all being of the same age? Again, we have a slight age difference, but not much. These all appear to be of a similar age, and look how poorly they're dressed. They've literally got a sack over them with arms and a piece of string around their bellies. Photographs weren't necessarily taken back then unless there was a reason to. Today, with our phones and such like, we take photographs willy-nilly, hundreds of them. But back then, a photograph was a thing of importance and had a meaning to it always. It was an expensive process. So the fact that we're observing photographs of this means there was huge significance to this, what we're seeing. And here we have another group of children. These appear to be mostly girls. And in the back we have the bowler hat controllers. But they all, or a lot of these girls, seem to be of a similar type age. Now, the orphan trains. As I mentioned earlier, in New York, the orphan trains, which is gone now, where 200,000 plus children were transported to new lives within the interior of America. But I also know that when I was doing my research, the same thing was happening in Russia. So Russia fundamentally was very depopulated. So we have a huge push to populate the world, or the realm, around this period of time. And that obviously leads to a question of why there was nobody around, or very few people. And certainly if you look at photographs of the 1850s of buildings, Tartarian buildings and such like, there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs of all these lovely buildings, but there's no people about, or very few. You get the odd horse and cart, but you don't get many or see many people. Now, what we see is this phenomenon as well. So from the orphan train, what would happen is, before the orphan train was about to go out, a flyer would be sent to the area, and children, homes for children would be wanted, and so you could fundamentally rock up and choose the child you wanted or not. That seems very, very slack, unsafe, and has many connotations that are not very nice. These children would have been open to widespread abuse, neglect. I'm not saying all of them were, but I think when you get given something for free, I think the children would have been treated similar to a dog. Certainly by some families. I don't think this was a very pleasant time in our history, because of the influx of so many children. And here we have in Paris, we have sorry about that, we have a Foundling hospital held a baby raffle. So the Foundling Hospital, so they're calling these children foundlings, as if they've just been found by magic. Isn't that a nice way of putting it, rather than a cloned group of people or children? They're foundlings, so they just found them magically, and they're holding a baby raffle to give these children away. Now I will go into some of my thoughts on this and of reasons why. Now another thing we see in America around this period of time, and I don't know if it was anywhere else, but certainly in America it was definitely a thing, where there were so many children that you could actually post your child across America. And I think children could be posted around up to 750 miles quite happily by the postal service, and you'd pop the child in a bag and off they'd go. I mean, this is really, really mind-boggling, really, that you could post a child. But if you've got a glut of something, and that's a horrible way of putting it, but if you have a glut of children and you need to move them around, then the sanctity of that child, the importance of that life, diminishes. So we can clearly see postal workers with letters and a child to be delivered. Now when you have a lot of children and you're trying to get your country back up, if you're the controlling class, what better way to use them is in the industry and empty places that you had adults working previously, before the adults disappeared. And here we can see two children working in a mine. Part of the Industrial Revolution, or the push of the industrial growth of the world, was done by these children as slave labour. They would be shown what they needed to do, and they would do it, and they would work for 16 hours a day sometimes, in appalling conditions. Here we have a couple of children smithing. Their conditions actually look quite good. I think, I'm not quite sure what this is. It could be a coal mine or some kind of something. But again, we have children all of the same age working. And this child might be slightly older, and so he's in charge. Appalling conditions. They're all dressed the same. They all have the same. And here we have mills and such like, with children working in the mills, with all the unguarded belts and such like, which we would never have today. But again, in England, we had orphanages or workhouses next to the industrial area mills, and so there was a steady supply of young children to work in these mills by the ruthless and uncaring masters. Again, children, all children working within industry. And here we have the masters. We have the children lined up. These ones are particularly well dressed, so perhaps they have been chosen for a more elitist lifestyle. But this gentleman kind of looks like a Rockefeller to me. As we can see, commodities. Now, when you have so many children, you need to create organisations and such like. Now, with this cross, and the cross is obviously a symbolisation that has deeper meanings than these children understand. But these could be scouts or cubs in the UK, some kind of Baden-Powell type thing with the children going on. But they're in military lines, being taught and educated for a certain purpose and reason. Now, this is just a photo to show the educational side of stuff. But these children would not have been educated in any way. And so we have the adults educating the children into the history and everything else. If I can just go back to this. I think this is quite nefarious reasons. And I think the reason why we had so many children and they were pumping out so many children was they understood the need for wars, world wars, and manpower. And he who had the most children that had turned into adults at the same time could then potentially win a war once those children had made the armaments and such like. Now that sounds quite dark, but when we observe World War One, the Boer Wars, the World War, the UK was clearly with Victoria, Queen Victoria, with all the shenanigans going on with her and trying to take over the world. We can clearly see why so many children would be needed. And if you have children with no parents around, there's very few adults. If you have children with no adults, the teacher has the ability to tell them anything and they will believe it. And you can create a completely new paradigm and understanding of the world and the realm around you. A reset of the mind, in fact. We also have the clergy with all the children, and how the church was involved in the orphanages, and we have seen some quite horrific headlines, especially in Canada and Australia, where mass graves of thousands of children have been found via the church's hands. The orphan trains and the orphans have a very, very important role in our where we are now future, because if there was a reset or cataclysm that wiped out most of the adult population, and the controllers, the rich elite, survived that with technology still left, it then gave them the free rein to take over the realm and control the world. Now, let me let me go back to me. Now, I'm very sorry if that's quite a dark look at what's going on. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be a piece of history, to understand that our history is not always light and love. Now, there's a couple of things that I've taken and thought about over this orphanage and orphan trains and the foundlings as such. Now, a child that's been cloned, or a human that's been cloned, does not necessarily have the full connection to source like many do. And so if you have a small population of people who are divine individuals with a full connection to source, with the kind of abilities and their own power, divine power that humans have always had, people have always had, and you start watering that down with cloned children who do not, you could then potentially affect the spirituality, because we're talking about spiritual war here in some respects. You could then change the spirituality of what's coming up at the end of this period of time that we now see ourselves in. I believe a lot of this was done on purpose. This is a plan by the elites. And I'm so sorry it's quite a dark one I'm doing now, but I think it's important we understand where we come from and to see where we're going. So it's like a cordial drink, a fruit juice. If you pour a bit of fruit juice in the bottom of the glass, it's strong, it's fully there, and you start adding water to that cordial, you dilute it to the point where you would, if you were wanting that effect, where you could hardly taste the cordial. And I think this is something that's been going on or has been tried by the elite via the program and the real reason for the orphan trains and such like. I mean, obviously they needed, or they wanted to use us to dig minerals and mines and create wealth for them, and to be able to re-educate and repoint and direct an entire world civilization. And I think they did a very good job of it. But that is now changing, and that is now ending, because fundamentally their plan has not worked, and we are divine sovereign beings of so much potential and so much power, and they cannot bottle us up anymore, and they cannot dilute our power. We are amazing, wonderful people, and we are just beginning to learn this. We are going through ascension symptoms and the ascension of the realm. There is a split within the realm currently, a higher vibrational frequency to a lower vibrational frequency. Now, I have looked at this in the mathematical and shown in a way on some information that I came across. We're talking about the Christ code, which is the higher vibrational frequency, to the Fibonacci sequence. And the Fibonacci sequence is something that will always collapse upon itself and is death and destruction and decay. And the Christ code is life, enlightenment and growth. And we are on the Christ code. We have the opportunity to really, really grow into our power. And I really have no fear or concerns about the future. I will be doing another video shortly about this, about Operation Looking Glass, and something I was shown by Source several years ago now that led me onto the journey of this particular part and where we are now on my personal journey. So I'm sorry if it was a little bit dark. on the orphan trains. I don't mean it to be so, but I also have to be a realist in the reality of where I think and the whys, you know. I hope I came across okay, and the understanding of the use of and how the elite have done nefarious things for the control of and to take over, which is not happening, and it won't happen because of what's been seen by Operation Looking Glass and where we are currently. So we're in a really good position, but this is history that I think we need to be aware of and understand, and think about the connotations of the historical context of what we see and why they try to do so. So please like, share and subscribe my channel. I won't be doing, or try not to be doing, such dark or darkish ones again, but I think it's important we kind of have a broad understanding and knowledge of our history to how we got to certain places. So blessings and thank you very much. Bye everybody.